Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This is the continuation of See You in the Morning. This will be Part 9, Chapter 9, entitled Problem Child Indeed. With the start of classes at UA, as well as being injured so badly just before them, Izuku hadn't been working a lot, which means he didn't get to go shopping for food like he knew he needed to. It was groceries or rent, and he needed his apartment much more than he needed food this week, though it was going to be really hard to hide this from his neighbors, since Izuku knows that they've been watching him extra close since meeting Hinto. Just how hard this was going to be became extremely apparent when midnight came around and Izuku found himself in his kitchenette with an empty gray mug. He'd run out of instant coffee at some point, and since he had no grocery money, that also meant no coffee for the week. When Aizawa walked into his own kitchen, across from him just a couple of minutes after midnight, he signed a greeting to Izuku, then set to work making his mug of coffee. Only looking back up at Izuku through the window once he was done and starting to sip from his cat mug, Izuku sees the way his dark-haired neighbor seems to freeze briefly when noticing his empty mug, which was obvious since Izuku had accidentally started fiddling with it while waiting to chat with the man, and was literally turning the worn mug upside down. "Where's your coffee?" "Ran out. He cuts himself off. "My aunt is getting some more tomorrow morning, so no coffee for me tonight, sadly." The man's eyes narrow slightly after him, then down at the mug, in Izuku's hand, seemingly trying to decide if he was telling the truth. Finally, he nods and takes a sip from his own mug. Thank Kami, Izuku couldn't deal with more questioning about it. "How was school today? I didn't get to talk with you earlier to check in." Check in? Why would he check in with Izuku? "School was fine, though I had to stay back and talk with Ectoplasm-sensei about my coursework." "That's good, kiddo." "Is it, though?" He can't help the question. Izuku knows he has trust issues, and even more so with teachers, but knowing you have trust issues and fixing them, especially when it's actually more harmful to fix them than not, are two very different things. Eraser probably knows if it's truly good or not much better than Izuku would. "It is. He'll make sure that you're learning everything that you should be learning. You can trust him to teach you well. He's a good teacher." Izuku doesn't know how his neighbor knew exactly what to say, but hearing that Eraser trusted Ectoplasm-sensei helped him settle that part of him that was still vibrating with nerves from earlier today. "Okay. Good night." With that, Izuku leaves, no reason to stay when he had other things he needed to do, and it's not like any coffee would magically appear for him if he stayed. Izuku sends off a quick text to Hinto about picking up more shifts for the coming days to hopefully get back on top of things. He's usually a lot better at keeping up with the shifts at the cafe. Stupid murdering Quirkless cult, making him miss his shifts. Curling up in his blankets with the lights off is like finally being able to fully breathe after a day of something sitting on your lungs slightly. Not enough to suffocate you, but you're uncomfortably aware of it. He naturally didn't like being around people, well, maybe less naturally and more like he knew that he was a lot safer alone than near other human beings. Everyone had taught him that, so sitting by himself in his own apartment was always like paradise to him, right now included, so he lets himself relax and drift. Just before he fully gives in to sleep, his phone dings loudly from beside him, startling him fully awake. "Hey, of course you can pick up some shifts. I have a free spot tomorrow if you want, then. I also have another 2 later in the week as well. Let me know, shorty." Izuku rolls his eyes at his boss's antics. "Thanks, I'll take all 3 of those shifts. Just send me the times and I'll be there. Have a fun shift and tell Fuwashi I said hi." After that, he receives a couple other quick messages just telling him the times of the shifts as well as a couple relayed messages from Fuwashi sent through Hinto. Izuku has just set his phone down again and turned over in his bed to go to sleep when his phone dings again. Who is it now? "Hey, Izu, it's Hitoshi. You want to see a picture of my cat?" What the hell, why not? Not like he wouldn't love to go to sleep or anything, but Izuku does love cats and cute cat photos, so he gives in easily. Of course. What follows are some adorable pictures of the fluffiest flame point kitty that Izuku's ever seen. Her name is Princess, though I call her Crown. No regrets. Finally, Izuku says goodnight and is left fully alone, free to finally go to sleep, and a warm feeling stuck in his chest. It's nice, feeling thought of. Shota didn't know how everything went to hell so quickly. His day started off with an adorable Millie gently batting him awake as his husband laughs at him from their bedroom doorway. He had a wonderful cup of Death Wish coffee from his favorite mug, a gift from Shirakumo in second year, and made it to work without having his eardrums broken while listening to Zashi sing along to the radio. Sadly, from there his day seemed to only go down. Shota noticed Midori didn't eat lunch today. The only reason he knew this was because he may or may not have been keeping an eye on his little neighbor and his purple-haired friend as they made their way to a tree outside to eat. But it wasn't creepy or anything. He just wanted to make sure the kid was staying safe. He didn't want to admit he was still on edge from the kid scaring him by passing out yesterday and Shota not being able to do anything to keep him safe. The little teen not eating wasn't helping. 1A knows that they have an important heroics lesson last period, so fueling up beforehand is important. Thankfully, before Shota decides on how he could actually slip the kid food from lunch rush or his own bento box, he notices that Shinso forced some of the food from his own bento box into Izuku's hands to eat. After that, he leaves the two to chat and goes to find his husband in the teacher's lounge, only getting teased about hovering over his little listener a couple of times while trying to eat. From there, he thought things were getting better again, but then they finally arrived at the USJ. He was teaching this lesson with the help of 13 Ragdoll and Mandalay, so plenty of supervision for his class. Bakugo was still out on suspension, while Nezu had worked on getting evidence of other assaults and bullying from Aldera's school cameras and Populous, so one less kid to worry about keeping in line. Though he notices how his class seems to shift uncomfortably every time they notice the continued absence of their classmate. Ragdoll and Mandalay, from the famous rescue hero group, happened to be in town to pick up a nephew who had recently lost his parents, so they decided to join in the rescue lesson that he had planned for 1A. Everything had been going great, till Kirishima had pointed to a swirling purple vortex that had apparently appeared suddenly in the middle of the plaza. "Everyone get back. Those are real villains." With that, Shota found himself surrounded on all sides by mediocre villains who were trying to kill him, a few calls of distress emanating from his students as he did so. He trusted the other heroes to protect them, though while he was busy. A couple screams from behind him distract Shota from his adversary just in time for him to see multiple swirling vortexes swallow his students up, along with the two cat-themed pro-heroes. No! He gets stabbed for being distracted. Stupid low-level villains. That fucking hurts. It wasn't the first time getting stabbed, and it probably wouldn't be his last, but it still bothers him a lot. Wow, you've got quite the quirk there, Eraserhead. A chill runs down his spine, but he doesn't have the time to acknowledge it. I know someone who would like it, but alas, you're in my way. Where's All Might? Of course, that absolute failure of a hero was to blame for this. All Might doesn't work here. The pale blue-haired adult scratches at his neck, face twisting into anger. Liar! I know he works here. The man pauses, seemingly thinking hard before a cruel grin overtakes his face. Maybe. If I kill a few kids, he'll show up. Shota feels like throwing up. Where are his students? Where are they? Where's Midori? No, Moo. Incapacitate Eraserhead. The last thing that Shota sees is a blur of darkness, and then blinding, sparking pain blooms violently across his vision, and it doesn't fade. Thankfully, sleep eases the colorful art palette, and he falls into a semi-restful state. His last thoughts are of a young green teenager drinking coffee at night, and his loving husband. Izuku gets thrown out of the warp gate and directly into open air before smacking water with all the grace of a headless chicken, which is to say, none at all. What the hell? What the hell was happening? 1 second his class was standing and listening to 13 speak, and now they'd been separated, and the last he saw Eraser was facing off a small horde of villains, as well as a man who Izuku assumes is running this impromptu visit in the hulking figure of a monster. Sadly, Izuku doesn't have the time to spare worrying about Eraser as he notices a man with a shark quirk rocketing toward him in the murky water. Shit, shit, shit. He tries to dodge, but it's nearly impossible when underwater and starting to suffocate. Thankfully, something wraps around his waist and he's drug out of the way and up toward the air. He finds himself gasping lungs full of air on the wet deck of a boat with a nervous-looking classmate. Are you okay? Call me Sue, Karo. Okay, call me Mido or Izu then. Okay, Mido, and yes, I'm fine. I should be asking if you're okay, Karo. Do you have a plan on how to get out of here? Me? Yes, Karo. I know you're good at strategy from our hero versus villain simulations with All Might Sensei. Ah, right. Well, this is weird, both because of the praise and the fact that she had seemed worried over his well-being. Or that she saved him in general. It was nothing, really. Just common sense, really. He gets a rather pointed blank look for that. Sue and Toshi would get along great, Izuku suddenly thinks. Okay, I have an idea, if you're willing. Shota slowly faded back into existence in a hospital room. He hates hospitals, always reminded him of Shirakumo's death, as well as when Zashi had gotten really hurt a couple of years back, had to be put under a medically induced coma for a week. So waking up on one of the hero ward's thin-ass, chemical-smelling mattresses, with every inch of his body aching like a day-old bruise, was not how he wanted to be spending his time. Not that he had much of a choice. Zashi was right there, holding his hand, when Shota had opened his eyes, though he quickly realized he wouldn't be truly seeing anything for a bit, since it feels like there's currently a wrap or a bandage over them. Sho, you scared the ever-loving shit out of me. Little Ida suddenly burst in my classroom, yelling about a villain attack at the USJ. Gummy, everything looked horrible when we got there, show. You can hear what he assumes is his worried husband clicking the call nurse button now that he's awake, then getting a paper cup of water handed to him to help clear his throat, which honestly was good. He probably wouldn't have been able to respond otherwise. It's okay, Zashi. I'm okay. How are the kids? 13, Mandalay, Ragdoll. They're okay, though Todoroki suffered from hypothermia, as did Hakakure. Yaoyorozu needed to be given a different dietary plan for a couple of days to replenish her lipids, and 13 got pretty banged up. Pretty sure they're getting out of their surgery in an hour or so. Mandalay and Ragdoll are okay, decided to speed up their trip and to head back home with their nephew last night after getting checked over by Chiyo. Shota notices right there that there's something else his husband needs to say, but doesn't want to say. Sadly, an older nurse walks in right at that moment and they have to wait to continue. The nurse, one Yamada, ironically enough, checks all of his charts, stats, and asks him an extensive list of questions about his memory and senses as well as his pain levels. Finally, she takes off the wrap across his eyes and face, changing out the larger bandages for smaller patches or leaving them uncovered. They both watch as she excuses herself soon after, silence reigning in the room. What is it, Zashi? Well, our little listener also got hurt. What? His eyes snap to the blonde's face, giving him his sole focus. He's fine. Though... And with the trailing sound, Shota watches as his husband walks over to the curtain beside Shota's bed, which he hadn't noticed before this, and pulls it back to reveal an asleep Midori. His eyes are immediately focused on the bandages wrapped around the teen's left arm and chest, as well as his cheek. He apparently also fought the leader, named apparently Shigaraki when you were down. Doctor says he'll be awake sometime today, and can be released tomorrow afternoon if there's 0 complications before then, and assuming a guardian can sign him out by then. Shota lets out the breath that he hadn't even noticed that he was holding. They're all okay. He just needs to be sure. Yes, your students are all okay. They're all safe and cared for. Okay, Zashi. Okay. Shota allows himself to lean on the form of his husband when he comes closer and just feel protected and safe for a minute. They stay like that for a while, Zashi just playing with Shota's hair and making loose braids only to quickly undo them. Why did you specify about his guardian signing him out? You said by then why. It had honestly been bothering him since Zashi said it, but he had been basking in the relief and the guilt of his student's state. From his position leaned against the blonde, he immediately feels him stiffen at his question. Oh no. We haven't been able to get into contact with the little listener's aunt as of yet, though we are trying every couple of hours to reach her. If she doesn't answer by tonight, we're going to try one of the other contacts. Sei-san should count her blessings that Shota is stuck in the hospital bed. Why wasn't she already here with Midori? The kid obviously loved her, even if Shota was mad at the woman for leaving the kid alone that night and potentially all the time, Nezu's theory still weighing heavily on his mind. It'll be okay, Shota. Will it, though? He just sighs, his husband seeming to relate as they both watch the sleeping form of their little neighbor. Problem child indeed. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 9 of See You in the Morning. Chapter 10 is next. Let me know your thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.